Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Dimitri. Let's hear more. I'm curious, what are the examples that you've seen out there, maybe examples that you've worked on or examples that you've observed from someone else, where companies have really had exceptional innovation because of this profound understanding of what's really happening with the consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the sort of the board game idea, the element of fun is actually quite key. But I'll give you an example at the very beginning of my own career. Do excuse me, I will have to not disclose names because I have NDAs up to my neck for those things. But I can give you an example to do that. So at the very beginning of healthy eating revolution in the UK, which has actually not truly arrived, but is there, unlike other nations, I think we had the movement of frozen yogurts, and people were starting to understand it. They couldn't really understand, is it just frozen yogurt? Is it something else? And how would you actually review it? It was bought by a specific group of people that even the founders of this company, they couldn't really understand why there were all of these people that were more interested into fashion and sort of trends, rather than those who perhaps was advertised as a healthy treat, low sugar, low fat. And so they were aiming to actually gain access to the gym people, the people that go to the gym, they exercise, those that are like healthy cautious and so on. So it was perceived to be as almost a Whole Foods type of treat. But on the other hand, they were getting people like in fashion, they were getting people that were saying, no, this is a trend, which those two are also, communities that they merge with each other. They are quite familiar, but they are distinct for their own properties. So we've done a great deal of work. We've done a great deal of work to actually understand how people actually perceive frozen yogurt. And from the analysis that I've done, from the work that I've actually worked with them on a number of levels, we've done surveys, observations, experiments, a great deal of tools we used. We actually understood that a frozen yogurt as a category or as a product was actually perceived more likely as a fashion accessory than a food category. So now imagine me as a consumer psychologist, and back then, it's about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, going back to the stakeholders, the main founders, and say, just a second, just to let you know that you might be in the food industry, but really to succeed, you need to run your business as a fashion label. It didn't go down that well. Just imagine that you're producing food, you're a food producer, and here comes a scientist going, yes, you're a yogurt, but people actually view you in the same line, the same categories, similar to a handbag. So if you really want to succeed, you need to talk like a handbag, you need to look like a handbag, and you need to perform like a handbag, even if you're actually made out of yogurt. Anyhow, they were very kind people, and they gave me a shot, and I said, okay, you sound mad, and we are a frozen yogurt company. We're not really having anything to do with fashion, but we'll give you a go. So at that stage, they had 2 stores in London. And so I said, give me one of your stores and I will do some interventions that they sort of echo what I'm telling you. And you keep the other one as healthy, happy, avocado clan people to run your business. And the fashion store actually performed so much better. So much better, to a degree that when a massive supermarket came to them and they sort of offered them to buy them out, we went back into contact and they said to me, what do you think? And I said, well, handbags, good quality, fashionable handbags are not being sold in supermarkets. Of course, these days you actually have clothing lines and so on. If you really want, and this is an expensive product, it's about 6-7 pounds of a tub of yogurt, because you add toppings and fruit and all of that stuff, it ends up to be really, really expensive. If you want to develop and form an alliance, I think it's better to form it with a fashion label rather than with a supermarket who you would simply get buried into a freezer and nobody will actually know who you are. So what they've actually done, we sort of look with an analysis, and we've sort of paired them with a number of providers. And they've done a collaboration with a very famous fashion brand to create in the UK. Back then was one of the first joint ventures between food and clothing, which is why, but now it's actually quite common. And they've done incredibly well, a lot more than but the analysis was for a supermarket provider. So imagine that how you run your business, how you plan your future, it really depends upon the consumer's perception. Perceptions are not realities. Of course, a frozen yogurt is a food category, but if it's not perceived as such, you need to act accordingly. So yeah, the trend, and still is one of the key trends, is healthy eating, healthy foods, and so on. But at times you don't have to go through trends. You have to simply listen to the consumer as to how they perceive you. Reality and perceptions are very different things. I think businesses at the moment, they have unique abilities and tools to understand realities, but not perceptions. We're not a sum of our realities. We're simply a perception, an illusion. So measure that and you're in business.
I think that is such a brilliant example, because as somebody who works with entrepreneurs, I'm always trying to get them to look beyond what they do to what they mean. And in fact, that brings me to my next question. I remember I was working with the innovation group at Philips in the Netherlands, and one of their designers said to me, we have this great approach to innovation. We create an answer, and then we go look for a question. So what he's saying is, in that moment, even though it's a multinational organization, it actually is a behavior. It's very similar with entrepreneurs. Like bakers start bakeries, engineers create something technical. And in a way, that's the problem, is that they're so close to what they do, they don't really grasp the greater significance that you're alluding to. And so I'm curious, what do you think the fundamentals are that a company needs to embrace for them to get innovation or just market traction right?
Be less arrogant.
What do you mean by that? I'm curious.
I think I see a great deal of corporate arrogance. We know it all. We've been successful for such a long time. We've been making money. What do you mean that you actually need innovation and to need consumers? We know what we're doing. I don't think they do. And I think I've seen genius ideas coming from small businesses, as the example that you just referred to as well. And I see those big, amazing, great names that, I've worked for a number of those people, and they're fantastic. They're great people. But I think sometimes the size of their organization doesn't allow them to actually understand that innovation should be of service. It's not a privilege. We should be of service. And I think at times they look at innovation in the same way as they actually look something that's unique, is untouchable, is something so extreme that we should be treated in a specific way. Innovation is just something so much more simple. It should be simple. It should be approachable. And the more into terms we come with, look at it from a humble perspective of how we can be of service rather than provide a service, then we're going to be a lot closer. I think people look at it in the way of actually designing a new product, designing a new service. Well, fun enough, we don't need anything else. We actually have everything. But be of better service to someone, or be a better service, providing something that can actually assist your life, it will be, I think, a better mechanic, a better platform to actually use innovation and use a sort of component. I think, if we're thinking about iPhones, if we're thinking about, mobile phones and so on, the very concept of it is just simplification. I think simplification is just, the very core of 21st century innovation rather than something totally unique and totally an aha moment. So I think if we start from that level of simplifying, it's going to be a lot more healthy to adopt and even come up with ideas that perhaps can really change the world. I feel that the concept of simplifying things and being humble and be of service haven't reached the C-suite just yet.
Wow, that is such a great word, being humble, being at the idea of being at service. I'm 1,000% on side with that. And exactly what you just said. I remember I was invited to head up the strategy with a multi-million-dollar grocery retailer on the creation of what they referred to as their store of the future. And in their briefing, they said, we want the experience of that store to be a game changer in the way people perceive us. And, I've heard that kind of big ambition before. And I said, okay, before I start, I actually want to interview all of the senior executives one-on-one And you imagine, this is a grocery retailer. So there's 15 executives, 14 of them are men, average age 48, none of them shop with their wives. So I asked all of them, step back for a moment and tell me what you think your business is fundamentally about. At the end of 15 interviews, 2 people mentioned food and 1 person mentioned women, even though women are the primary shopper, the most important shopper in a grocery store. And I just thought, you don't actually understand what your business is about. The CEO is a Harvard MBA. It's like, okay, well, that's one of the best business schools in the world. And you can go to the best business school, but if you don't get this fundamental understanding of what makes your consumer's heart sing, I just don't see how you can create a true value proposition. You can't anymore. You just simply can't. I think, go back 30 years ago, it was one thing when consumers were still new to the internet. You could run ads, you could bamboozle them with that. But nowadays, brand is not image, brand is behavior. And I think it's amazing to me, your point is that I think that arrogance needs to disappear. And I think more people like those executives need to go to the grocery store, pick up a cart, and experience it the way the consumer does before they can start to embrace big changes in their organization. That's my view.
Absolutely. I think it's just a very apt example. And, again, no disrespect to these individuals. They are victims of a system that they had to serve, and they had to achieve their professional goals in that manner. So I've got no beef against them. But, like yourself, I at times when we work with retailers and so on, I take them out on a retail safari. So it's specifically actually ask them to dress like a common person. And I said, what do you mean that common person? It's like no suits, jeans, a t-shirt, and a hoodie. Like, we don't own a hoodie. It's like anything. It's just, anything that you feel is going to be something that, you're not going to be you. And if I had to spend more than an hour and I had to actually speak to their PAs about how to dress up as a normal person, we're already starting a process of actually, you're on the decision table and you have no idea. And I take them out and I take them at times within their own stores to actually see their own experience of what it takes to find something, navigate through, understand where they are. And then literally at the end of, we do a half day because obviously these people are quite busy. They get it, and it's a beautiful realization to actually see that this is your business. This is how everyday consumer sees you. Your big glamorous statement about what you're gonna do and who you are, and that you've spent a lot of time on making some sort of logos about your own existence, are lovely, are great, but they're not how people actually see you. So it really, really is important to ground these individuals, see what it's all about, and allow them to actually be inspired by that. Because I think innovation lives with the people. I've never heard of 5 executives being locked up in a room and come up with a genius idea. If anything, they're probably killing each other.
It's funny. I had a client recently, kind of come up with one of these moments, and he said, he's again, I won't name them, but they're in the media business. And he said, we've got these amazing female superhero characters. He said, we're not exploiting these. We can do stuff with this. We can really engage young girls and teens with this. And so he called a strategy meeting, and he said 4 50-year-old guys showed up. And he said, I went, guys, we cannot have this discussion. We simply do not understand the audience enough. Clearly. And I thought, what a moment of enlightenment for him to go, this is nuts. We got to get a different group of people around the table. The reality is, though, that in more cases, I've actually seen those same 50-year-old guys get around the table and say, okay, we're going to talk about how to engage teenage girls without actually realizing that they don't know. So I was inspired to find a client who actually got it, and hopefully it'll be more like him.
So my inspiration will be, and I'm sorry to interrupt, my inspiration will be that one day there's going to be a CAO, a Chief Audience Officer, not a Chief Marketing Officer, because a marketeer, an amazing profession that we should continue support, is an individual who actually uses different techniques to come into terms with the audience. Doesn't always necessarily mean that they know the audience, a chief communicator. we do need someone in the audience that, on the C-suite, in the executive sort of, sort of team and so on, someone who their job is to simply be in touch with the audience, collect reports, be there, understand and give the honest view of how they've been viewed, what they can actually do, respond upon trends that they might be existing out there. Someone who is independent of any processes or any divisions in the department that they can be linked with commercial values or commercial baselines. Everyone else has a very strict, I suppose, understanding of, how many campaigns they've done marketing, how many successful there, and so on. I think being in contact with honesty in the people should not be measured in that manner. But we should have a chief audience officer entering every single business out there.
Amen, brother. I completely agree. One of the biggest areas that I counsel the companies that I coach and I work with is in the creation of a value proposition. And I say, again, just parroting what you said, I don't bear any grudge against people because they simply don't understand, but it is amazing to me the number of companies that come up with a value proposition without understanding deeply their consumer and how they serve. So my last question to you is this. I actually think the work that you do is the foundation for competitive differentiation. And what would your advice be to someone who is creating a venture in terms of where to start? How can they embed this? First of all, how do they go about it? What do they do? And how do they embed it within their culture so that it's never forgotten going forward, that the obsession must be on service and on understanding your target audience? Where should they start?
I think in a business setting, in an entrepreneurship, in a business, there are numbers of eyes. I have this idea, or my business is doing this, my business is doing that. So there is a number of eyes. I think if we replace this very, very easily with the term we are developing this, we are going to offer this, that will almost force them to understand that they're not on their own, which is also can be a lonely experience, but there are other people around them, such as their clients, their stakeholders, that they need to be of service. I think that I am of service should be a motto for a number of people. And I think also this is, forgive me that I'm writing a book about that, about how religion was successful. Religion was successful to be picked up as a product, not in a disrespectful way, as a concept, as a philosophy and so on, because it was meant to be of service. People devote a lot of money, people pay a lot of money, people devote their own lives for a concept that is quite brand oriented. You don't get anything back in return. So if we think about it, religion has been one of the most successful movements in terms of marketing and branding and connecting with people with the clear promise, I'm of service to you. Business can learn a great deal about that. And we actually need to be there. What is your service? If you're not of service to anyone and you are just simply an add-on, think again. Be of service. Now, that service doesn't necessarily have to be incredible. You don't have to change people's lives. You just need to make it slightly easier. From food to technology to lifestyle to travel. How we can be of assistance. I think people these days, we don't need anything extra. I think we are not everyone. There are still communities that actually need a lot of help. So I don't want to sound ignorant. But I think on the whole, I think in the developed world at least, we have all the products and services that we might need. All the other stuff are just making our lives a little bit more sort of, comfortable. We're just, pushing the needle, so to speak, on the comfort zone. So just think about how we can push that and make it more comfortable, be of service to others, and have that perspective upon that. Never forget that any business has a business partner, which is its audience. You're not on your own. And I think this is, for me, one of the key lessons that I've seen successful businesses actually flourishing. If we actually think about Airbnb, it is to be of service to consumers, that you don't have to pay all these hotel bills. Our community will help each other. You rent out my space, I'll rent out your space for a lot cheaper. we are service to community. And, for me, that's just an innovative company that, caused a great deal of waves within the business world with that particular premise in mind: service to the community, service to each other.
I love that idea. And I also love the idea that you have a business partner and it's the consumer. It's the person buying your product. It's so funny because I think that interesting little twist on the framing of it is so much more institutionalized, I think, in the way that it's interpreted, that it's probably easier for people in certain departments in these companies to understand a business partner, but they don't necessarily see their consumer as one. I love that. I love that idea. I love that concept. And I think you're right. In an age where every category practically is oversupplied with solutions, it's often the company that does have that deeper connection, which starts with to be of service, that is going to make a difference. And I just want to say again, I always love talking to you. So I want to say thank you again, Professor Dimitrios Tsivikros from the University College London. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much for sticking to the end of our two-part interview with Dr. Dimitrios Tsivikros, consumer psychologist and academic from University College London. Insight can be your secret weapon as you're preparing to go to market. And I love what Dimitri's doing to help entrepreneurs and business leaders find an edge. I want to give a big shout out to my amazing sponsor, the Innovation Hub at Carleton University, dedicated to helping create leaders, just like some of the ones that you see here in the creators. Find out more at www.carleton.ca/innovationhub, and please remember to hit like and subscribe for more great stories of inspired entrepreneurs.